Hello and welcome to Knights at the Game Table. Today we're going to be taking you through the top 5 picks for Guilds of Ravnica spoilers.
To keep up to date with everything at Knights at the Game Table, all you have to do is click subscribe and then hit that tiny little notification button next to it, so every time we upload a new video, YouTube will be sure to let you know.
We're going to start out at number 5, Risk Factor. Risk Factor is a 3-mana red instant, 1 red, 2 colorless. It has Jumpstart, which is a mechanic that lets you play it from the graveyard by discarding a card from your hand, in addition to playing the cost. And its effect is to make target opponent have Risk Factor either deal 4 damage to them or allow you to draw 3 cards. Aryeh, what do you think?
Well, this is a card that's generated a lot of discussion online in like our Pat's Game Facebook group and just like all over the internet, because people are real excited about it because 4 damage or drawing 3 cards, it sounds really good. The problem I have with the card is that you don't get to choose. Your opponent gets to choose.
You don't get to choose, which traditionally hasn't been great. Browbeat was a very similar card before, which was 5 damage or 3 cards.
Yeah, it's a very similar card to Browbeat, and they've done this mechanic a few times in different ways where your opponent gets to make a choice for you. And just what ends up happening a lot of the time is this card it'll be 4 damage when your opponent is 20, but then it's never at 4 damage when your opponent's at 4. So the problem is you're never going to get what you want. The question is are both halves strong enough that it's okay that you don't get what you want all the time?
See, I think giving it this Jumpstart mechanic, where you can replay it from the graveyard, flash it back, I think that makes a bit of a difference for this card. Because this one card is like, I don't know, discard a land, pay 6 mana over 2 turns and deal 8 damage. This one card is going to deal a total of 8 damage, and either they're going to have, that's a lot harder to suck up than 5.
That's true.
And if they can't do that, you're going to draw 3 cards. And if you draw 3 cards in your red deck and can't find another 4 damage, I feel like you built your red deck quite poorly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to me, I think it interests me more in older formats. The problem in Standard is that I just don't know if 4 damage to a player is that great in Standard. Just so much of what's going on in Standard is on the board. It's not like in Legacy or Modern. The biggest difference between Standard and older formats is Standard is mostly about what's going on in front of you, whereas the older formats, it's mostly about what's in your hand. A lot of the information's hidden. So this is a very good card. I feel like maybe in those formats you can end of turn instant, like 4 damage them. That's good to have hidden information. My problem is in Standard, if I'm playing a red deck, why don't I just play a creature and attack them? Like, why am I doing this?
So that is a good point. So whilst you are making them trade off either their life total or card advantage, it completely ignores board advantage.
Yeah, and
which
is why I think in the older formats that's less of an issue because I think it matters less. But there's enough like creature versus creature matchups, especially when you're looking at this set with Boros being one of the guilds. One of the toughest matchups for Boros already is going to be the green decks. You know, the Golgari decks. The mono green maybe decks. Like the decks that play 5/4s and 6/6s are really tough for those red decks, and having a card that only hits players that can't deal with any of those creatures that are in play, I think it's a little bit tough.
That's fair, so it doesn't really interact. Is there a modern burn deck you could see this fitting into maybe?
Yeah, see for me at least, I think that the best fit for this would be probably like a modern burn deck. At the same time, that deck is very streamlined, has a lot of cards like Lightning Bolt, Rift Bolt, a lot of 1 mana cards, and this card does cost 3, but I do think it would be an interesting card to try in Modern Burn, because end of turn, either you take 4 or I draw 3. That seems very strong to me, as opposed to maybe in Standard where I think it doesn't quite do as much.
Okay. So it also has the effect you discard a card. Did I say discard a land earlier? It's discard a card in addition to paying the other costs. Could that combo maybe with the Red Madness burn spell or something maybe? So you go like, okay, I'm going to discard my Madness card, 3 damage to you and this effect.
Yeah.
One. Is there anything else like that could?
I don't think there's that much that, unfortunately, with the discarding that really helps this particular card. I think it's blue that really wants things in the graveyard, oddly enough.
There's a volcanic one for 3 mana that splits 4 damage. It's like
then
you need 6 mana on the board, which is just too much. Basking Root Waller? I don't know. I'm looking for.
Yeah, I don't know if I think the discard in this particular case of this card is the discard has more to do with just giving you additional like advantage to cast it twice. But I don't necessarily think the discard in itself is really gaining you that much. Like I don't think you can discard too much for value off of it, unfortunately.
Squee, Goblin Nabob.
Oh, that is one of them, yeah.
Okay.
But I think for this one, I think standard it's a little tough just because standard is so important to have a strong board presence. It's less likely that you're going to have a standard deck that has enough burn spells that it can be just a pure burn deck. So I would be looking maybe older formats, seeing if this finds a place somewhere there.
Okay, on Pelt Collector. And if it gets 3 or more +1/+1 counters, it gains Trample. What do you think, Aryeh?
I really like this card. It is very similar to card Experiment 1 that was from the last Ravnica that was in a different guild. It was a Simic card, and that card also was a 1-drop that could get counters. But what I really like about this card is that it not only cares about entering, but also dying. So the fact that it has like multiple ways to put counters on it is, I think, really good. Plus, being an elf specifically is always a good thing when you're looking at like older formats. Having a creature type that's a really good tribal type makes this card significantly better. So like this is much better as an elf than it would be if it were just like a like a beast or something, right?
For sure, for sure. So are you seeing this card seeing standard play perhaps?
I think so. I mean, I think it's probably honestly gonna be a little muted at first, just because we don't have Stomping Ground right now. We can't play green-red, and I think that this would be a great card for green-red. The problem with right now is without having that land, a lot of our aggro decks are going to be red-based, and really in mono green, I think Llanowar Elves is a stronger 1-drop than this, to be honest.
For sure.
So, do you play Llanowar Elf alongside this card? Maybe.
If there's a Goblin Chain Whirler around, maybe not so much.
Yeah, maybe not. So I think this is a good card, has a lot of interesting applications. Definitely any 1-drop that can grow to be like a 3/3 pretty quickly, which this one can, I think is always something to be worth looking at. But this is one I think is going to end up getting revisited in the second set of Ravnica this time around. Once we have Stomping Ground, I think that opens up a lot for this card.
Fantastic. Are there any cards that jump to mind as ones that hop in and out of the graveyard a lot? I remember there was a red, like 2-mana 3/3 in a beatdown deck that would come in with fading 1, deal 1 damage, attack for 3, fade away, go away, deal 1 damage. That would trigger this twice. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, unfortunately not really. And we'll get to that when we talk about our Golgari spoilers. But, in the past, Golgari has cared a lot about bringing creatures back in play. But this time around, it doesn't actually do that. The Golgari mechanic, it counts creatures in graveyards, but it doesn't necessarily move zones. So unfortunately, other than casting them out of your hand, there's not a lot of ways to kind of like, pump this creature up really, really fast. You're basically looking at casting a 1/1 on turn 1, then on turn 2, casting a 2/2, on turn 3, playing something that costs 3, has a 3 or greater power, and then it's basically the way you're getting it to a 3/3, kind of like an old-fashioned way.
Sure, but it's, like you say, a 3/3 by itself for 1 mana is pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, that is true. They definitely once banned Wild Mikado in Modern for being a 1-mana 3/3. So
it's just too much.
It's just I mean, it is very, very strong. The question that I have for it is that where does it fit in the current mono green deck that we've seen in Standard the last year? And I think honestly, currently, right now where it fits is on the sideline.
Okay, maybe one for the future. That brings us to number 3, Aryeh, Exemplar of Justice. Aryeh, Exemplar of Justice is a legendary angel in red and white for 1 red, 1 white, and 2 colorless. She is a 2/5 with flying and mentor. Additionally, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can choose a creature you control to gain +2/+0. If it's red, it gains trample, and if it's white, it gains vigilance. So even all by herself, you got yourself a 4-mana, 4/5, flying, vigilance, trample, mentor. That seems pretty good.
Yeah, I think this card really has a chance to have a pretty good effect in Constructed. Now, it does cost 4 mana, so it starts to compete at that cost 4 and 5 mana in Constructed. You start to compete it with spots with like Planeswalkers and things, because those are usually how your aggro decks spend their like mid-turns usually. But I think what makes this card good, not only in maybe a commander type format where I think it's very good, but good in standard, is that you actually can pump up another creature the turn it comes into play. So the fact that you get an immediate effect, the turn it comes in, assuming it lives, and that +2/+0 happens, and you get a combat with the +2. So now even if your opponent answers it after that, you've already gotten some kind of incremental value. That's usually what you're looking for these kind of 4 and 5 mana creatures in standard, where they do something when they come into play.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, so even though it doesn't have a come into play ability, it has a combat ability that triggers immediately, which I think is what pushes it over the top to be a constructed playable, as opposed to just maybe a commander playable.
Nice. So Mentor, is that new to this set?
Yeah, Mentor is the new ability. It's for Boros. That's their flagship ability in the set. And basically you have a creature, and in combat you can target a creature with lower power, and the Mentor creature puts a +1/+1 counter on that smaller creature.
Gotcha. So I'm thinking if your deck's themed around, you're playing a lot of Boros cards, you've got a few Mentor cards. This could by itself give you make one of your creatures larger and allow one of your creatures to mentor the other one even before on that say your first turn. It's not just 2 power; it can be 2 power and a Mentor trigger, which is also a +1/+1 counter on top of that.
Yeah, I think you're going to see this in a lot of decks alongside Legion Warboss, which is the goblin that makes a 1/1 token every turn and also has Mentor. Because when you start to have multiple Mentor creatures in play at the same time, and they start mentoring each other in your whole board, I think it can get out of hand pretty fast. I think you can deal a lot of damage that way. But I think if we're going to just go card for card, I think this card it's kind of cooler, and it definitely is going to have more appeal as far as like Commander goes and other formats. But I think in Standard, it's possible that Legion Warboss ends up being the Mentor creature that sees the most play. Just because this card it's 2 colors, it's also legendary, so it has a few drawbacks built in, but I think it is the most powerful card with Mentor in the set.
Yeah, I mean, as a standalone, I feel the few standard formats in which I'm unhappy about 4 mana, 4/5 flyer.
Yeah, it's nice that it has other abilities that can pump other creatures, but the +2/+0 ability, it can target itself.
Yeah.
So that is very relevant if you're thinking about Standard, where you're playing against a control deck, they use some sort of an effect that destroys most or all of your creatures. It's a decent follow-up to like a Wrath of God effect, to just have it 4 mana 4/5. That's a reasonable follow-up to any kind of Wrath, which is good.
I mean, if I was going to play Beatdown nowadays, I would be taking... Sorry, if I was going to play Standard nowadays, I would be taking a Beatdown deck, because I'm well past my days of thinking 3 turns ahead with 18 counterspells and all the lands. And this is a card I would happily just slap on a table and go, okay, deal with that.
Yeah, and they have to find a way, right?
They have to find a way.
If they don't, they're going to be in trouble.
Alrighty. This brings us on to number 2, Divine Visitation. Divine Visitation is a 5 mana white enchantment, 2 white, 3 colorless. It reads, if one or more creature tokens would be created under your control, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. All of your squirrels are now Serra angels.
Yes, that is correct. I think
that's nuts.
Yeah, I think the card is very good. I think it's a tough sell a little bit in Constructed, but I definitely think it's a card that's going to be huge in Casual, and there will be people who try to make it work in Standard.
For sure, for sure. I see EDH players enjoying this as well. Commander, sorry for newer people.
Yes, we call it Commander now. But whether it's in that format or other casual formats, I think this card is very, very exciting for people who like that kind of thing, because it's just like, a nice way to reward you for playing a lot of token makers. I can definitely see a lot of people opening this card and liking it. To me, it's also kind of a little bit of a challenge built in for Limited. Because if you open this in your sealed pool, you start looking around for your token makers immediately, right? Yeah. You're like, where are my token makers? How can I make this work?
How many token makers would you have to play this?
I think in Limited, honestly, you'd have to look at about 5 or 6 at least.
5 or 6?
Yeah, I think with 1 or 2 or 3, it's probably not enough. But if you'd have to have,
let's say you had 3 token makers that were very good standalone. Mm-hmm. Would you then be tempted to play this thing?
I might be, yeah. I mean, you have to keep in mind there are some cards that are capable of creating multiple tokens, like the Guild Mage, Selesnya, which is Conclave Guild Mage. that card has an ability that makes a token. So that card could conceivably make a bunch of tokens.
A lot of 4/4 flying angels.
Yeah, but it's an interesting card. I think it's a great casual card. Honestly, it's probably going to be a good card financial long term because cards like this are always great long term for anyone who wants to play casual.
It goes in the whole doubling season sort of thing. It's very, very popular.
Yeah.
In that casual commander kind of.
It's a super fun card that I think a lot of people are going to have a lot of fun with. Will it be in the best standard deck? Probably not.
Combos with it were for other cards in the set. I know is there a convoke card that makes like 1/1s when you convoke?
Yes, there's a few different cards in the set that are capable of generating tokens, including there's a mythic that makes like X 1/1s. So conceivably you could like play this and then that. But
it's a lot of investment.
I think might be
a lot of angels.
I think there might be some Legion war bosses and Goblin Chain Whirlers out there that are going to be
spoiling everyone's fun.
Yeah, there are some goblins out there that are going to want you to be at 0 before you can try to do that.
That's fair. That's Legion war boss. That makes a 1/1 every turn, right, by itself.
Okay, now we're thinking about.
Here we go. So get your war boss, get your divine visitation. You're pumping out an angel.
Okay.
The turn you drop it.
That's fair.
Instant gratification. I'm a fan.
Yeah. I hope someone tries it, and I hope it works. It seems pretty sweet.
Okay, let's move on to the big one. It's number 1. It's Assassin's Trophy. If you haven't heard about this one, you have not been following the set at all, right? Even I've heard about this one. And
yeah, this is the one that most people are talking about. It's basically like just Golgari mana, right? It's going to be black and green, and then it can destroy target permanent, any permanent, including lands, and it costs you is your opponent gets to search for a basic land and put it into play. Now they do get that land untapped, which is a little bit of a deviation from other cards like this we've seen, like Path to Exile.
Yeah.
But I think that the exchange of giving them a basic land, but being able to destroy absolutely anything, like in Modern, I'm thinking about Krark Clan Ironworks, right? It's like non-creature permanents that you really don't have a great answer for. To be able to take care of all those combo permanents. And if you really have to, you can kill a Goblin Guide. I mean, it's unfortunate they're going to get a mountain out of it, but hey, you still can use it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the flexibility here is just what makes it huge.
That is absolutely huge. What would you say are the prime targets for it? I'm thinking like big planeswalkers, great big creatures.
Yeah, I think that in Standard, I really think Teferi is going to be the #1 thing. That's going to be the main reason you're going to include this in your deck instead of like just some other removal spell, because
Doomblade or what do we have nowadays?
We have Cast Down, which is
Cast Down,
but that can't kill a legendary creature. But like this card's like way better than Cast Down, because not only can it deal with any creature, like we were talking earlier about Aurelia, Cast Down won't deal with that. This one does. But it also can deal with like Teferi. If Ral, which is a planeswalker from this set, decides to get played some, which I think it might, it'll be able to deal with that also. So just the flexibility of basically being like Hero's Downfall was an older card, like destroy target creature or planeswalker in Standard. But I don't think that's what really makes the card exciting. I think what makes the card exciting is that you have formats like Legacy, where there are some decks that have a lot of permanents you want to deal with, but all the answers you can have are very narrow. Like Lightning Bolt is a pretty lame card in Legacy, whereas this card is able to deal with you can target like a Gristlebrand with this, but you could also target a sneak attack with this. And that is just enormous that you have that much flexibility in one card.
Seems pretty big. And in those older formats, sometimes they don't have basic lands to get.
Yeah, especially Legacy. There's a lot of Legacy decks, most of the Delver decks, that just play all dual lands, 0 basics. So it might actually, believe it or not, a brand new card in 2018, it might influence the mana bases of Legacy, because these Delver decks might want to start playing like an island.
I mean, I wouldn't feel bad about killing a turn 1 Delver if they're not even going to get a land out of it.
Yeah.
Seems perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, it does, in that format, you do have to think about the fact that Daze is a significant card, and in like some kind of deck where you're trying to give them a land and then daze them, maybe that's not a great combo.
That's true.
But I think the flexibility makes that huge. I think in Modern, there's really one deck that gets a big target on its forehead with this card, which is Tron, which is the Urza's land decks.
Oh, because you can take out lands.
Yes, because this card can answer their Urza Tron lands. If you're on the play, you can destroy their first land drop. They can get a forest, but that's not the same thing. Or if they do have their turn 3 Tron and they play like a Karn or one of their bigger cards, this actually deals with that too. So it can both destroy the lands to prevent them, keep them off of Tron, but then also keep some of the spells they can cast with their mana. That's a lot of flexibility against one deck.
That is an impressive card. It can even kill your opponent's Divine Visitation.
Yes, it can. Anything, anything. I guess if it's indestructible, no. So you're not going to be able to deal with like an Ulamog or anything.
Okay.
But
and there's some untargetable creatures in this set as well, right?
yes, Nullhide Ferox, our favorite guy.
Nullhide Ferox.
That guy would have to pay 4 mana to do this too, because you have to pay 2 to give him to take away his hexproof, and then another 2 to cast this and destroy it.
Still
but
not
you know,
bad. You
it's
still
not
do
that
it,
bad.
right?
I mean, you break even on mana, right? Your opponent cast a 4 mana card. You used 4 mana.
You don't take a
Doesn't seem
Ferox
too
to the
bad.
face, it seems.
Yeah, it seems fine. But I think in Standard it's more a utility card. But I think what excites people with this one, and me included, is that it will probably become a staple card in Modern and perhaps even Legacy, just for the flexibility alone.
Fantastic. Aryeh, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
It's been Knights at the Game Table. I'm excited for Guilds of Ravnica, and we'll catch you next time.